So back in the day when I was studying, I once got 18 out of 100 in my prelims exam, and that completely depressed me. It actually made me really sad, and I was super embarrassed about it. So then I decided there's something wrong here. It's not really the fact that I'm bad at statistics, it's just the way that I'm planning my studies. So then I started planning monthly and weekly and daily as to how I'm going to study the practice exams. I used to track how much time I'm taking, and that entire process actually changed my game, because in the next exam I ended up getting 90 out of 100 in statistics. What I'm going to do in this video is share with you as to how that happened. So I would suggest get a pen and a paper. It'll just help for you to take these notes down, because it'll help you actually start studying smart rather than studying hard. So step one is for you to start planning ahead. Okay, now how do you plan ahead? First of all, come to terms with the fact that each day can be split up into 3 large chunks, which is morning, afternoon and evening. Okay, now some of us are really good at studying in the mornings, and some of us are really good at studying in the evening. So we know what our power times are. So that means you can actually plan your studies in 3 different parts. Okay, so 1 month before your exam, or 2 weeks before your exam, or 3 weeks before your exam, start deciding that on a particular day, what are the 3 subjects or 3 chapters that you will study in the day: morning, afternoon and evening. In this way, you can actually categorize what are the difficult parts, so you study those parts in the time that you're best at studying, and the ones that don't require that much attention, you do them in your weak spot. The second step is to plan your subject. So you need to know what chapters have what difficulty level and what importance level. There are some chapters that are always more important for the exam, and there are some that are actually very difficult for you, and some that are very easy for you. So according to that, you need to allocate the amount of time you spend on that chapter. So what I would do is that I note down all the chapters. Next to the chapter, I would write whether I have the notes or I don't have the notes for them. Then I would write the importance level for the exam, so that I understand that this is more important for the exam that is coming up. And then I would write the difficulty level, that how difficult is this chapter for me. Based on that difficulty level, I would write that how much time I'm going to spend on that particular chapter. Then what happens is that you don't spend more time on chapters that you're already good at and less time on the chapters that you actually need to work hard on. The third step is to go into a little more detail and plan your week. Okay, so you need to plan out what time you're going to wake up on that particular day. You need to plan how many hours you'll study in that day. Okay, so let's say 7 hours, 8 hours, plan that ahead, and then write how many are the maximum amount of breaks you're allowed to take on that particular day. So then you write down what are the goals for the day. What that does is that for an everyday basis, you understand what you need to study, how much you need to study, and how many breaks you're actually allowed. Number 4 is tracking your syllabus. Most of the times what we end up doing is that we track a syllabus in the textbook. What that does is that we keep ticking stuff even though we've actually not finished that particular chapter, and that's because we want to feel good that we are done. And that's a problem, because you don't realize which chapters you've done well, which chapters you've not done well, which you need to revise and which you don't need to revise. So what I would do is write down all the chapters in your syllabus for this next exam, and then you need to write down what is your level of completion. Do you need to revise it again, or are you completely done with it? If you know that, then on the last day of the exam you can check which chapters that you need to revise. That means you're tracking the syllabus intelligently instead of just doing it to make yourself feel good. The next point is something that I personally did. I created this sheet called the revision sheet, and what I would do is write down the important questions and the difficult questions, and next to it I would write down a trigger word or a sentence that will make me remember the entire answer. Every answer to a question has a certain word or a sentence that actually triggers the entire answer to you. So this revision sheet, what it does is that whenever I feel like there is a certain question that is important, I write that down and I keep it, so that on the last day all I have to do is take that revision sheet and revise just those questions and the trigger words. Another thing I do is at the bottom I write down all the important numbers. So they might be stuff like dates or amounts or values or any numbers that I need to remember, so that on the last day I can actually just look at those numbers that are important and I keep them in mind just before I step into the exam. The next part is a formula or a graph sheet. If your exam has certain formulas or certain graphs that you need to remember and that are important for the exam, split it into 3 parts. One is the most important for the exam, one is the ones that you find most difficult, and one is the tips and tricks that you use to actually get it right. One of the other things I used to do is solve a lot of practice tests. But when we solve practice tests at home, we don't solve them properly. We don't think about how much time we took, how many marks we got. We just solve them for practice. The point of the practice is to actually practice how your exam will be, right? So what I do is that when I do practice tests, I track as to what was my performance level. I would track my weaknesses, because once I know my weaknesses for that particular exam, then what happens is for my actual exam, I study those weaknesses harder. I also track how much time I took, because that means I can start optimizing my time in the actual exam as well. The next one, which is a reality and you know about this, is after every exam we keep thinking about how many marks we'll get, what is the max I can get, what is the minimum I can get, and you need to stop thinking about that, because then you can't concentrate on your next exam. So what I would do after the exam is I would track that how was my performance level, then I would track what is the minimum marks I'll get and what is the maximum marks I'll get. And it actually helped, because once I put it out there, I did not think about it at all. It was out of my mind, it was out of my system. I moved on to the next exam. The other thing I would do is put up some posters around you that actually motivate you to study, and put down your phone and stop getting you distracted all the time. And these help, these actually help. And think about it, maybe you write it yourself if you want, or download them off the internet and just paste those posters around you. And the last one, which is important, is track how many days you have left till the exam, so that you are reminded constantly that you need to study. So put up a paper that says 3 days to go, 2 days to go, 5 days to go. Put it up there so that you're aware that you need to actually study. All these tracking mechanisms you can create at home on a piece of paper. But if you don't want to go through that trouble, I have created this thing called an exam kit. There is a link in this description where you can click it and get that exam kit, which has all these tools that I've shown you right now. Stop following pages that tell you that you don't have to study. All the dropouts that became successful are not the only ones that were there. There were a lot of dropouts that did not become successful. So please study. Understand the fact that studying is extremely important. So go out there, be nice, keep hustling, and study hard.